Today's video is to really discuss hospitality, and I want to give you examples of really world-class hospitality that's moved me and my fiance, and let's get right into it. I believe there's a way to create wonderful experiences that don't require staff and labor and that expense, and so I want to share with you two of my favorite hotels in New York City. They're owned by the same group. They both do this. One is at the Crosby Hotel in Soho, and one is at the Whitby Hotel in Midtown, and depending on what we're doing, we'll stay at either one based on location or how we're feeling. But in both of these locations, Kit Kemp, who's the designer, has done incredible design work. It feels really beautiful, and again, consistent with what I shared on the last video, it's an elevated form of comfort and hospitality. So it's at least as nice as our home, and then a little bit nicer, but it's not so pretentious, it's not over the top. You don't feel awkward or like you don't belong. It's quite the opposite. You feel quite at home and relaxed and comfortable, but in an aspirational way, something that we attempt to do in all of our Stomp properties as well. And so what is it that they created that's hospitable and yet doesn't require labor? Well, it's what they call their honor bar. And so they have this little nook. It's a wonderful little living room space, a couple of couches, a couple of seats, some tables, and people just go and congregate. And then in the corner is a hospitality bar, and we'll share a photo of that with you. And that's help yourself. And there's a little clipboard and a piece of paper and a pen, and you write your room and you write your name. And I'm sure there's some people who've taken advantage of it, and the naysayers out there will say, you know what the loss will be and the cost of that and associated this and that and the other. And I get all that, and those are valid concerns, but what about the pro? What about the optimistic side of it that says, now I'm staying in a hotel, but I feel like I'm literally holding court in my own living room, and every time I'm in one of these locations and my kids come to visit me, that's where we congregate, because I only have a standard hotel room upstairs, so nobody wants to sit on the bed and so on. But now we have this extension of ourselves, this living room that's beautifully designed, beautifully curated, and we have tea, coffee, snacks, juices, drinks, whatever, and we just write down what we want, kind of like help ourselves like we would in our own home, in our own living room, in our own kitchen. And so that's a perfect example of hospitality without labor. And in fact, there's been a few times where I've been in the room and holding conversations, and somebody's come in to clear or ask if everything's okay or we need anything, and going back to what I shared earlier on a prior video, that's disruptive. That turns out to be not welcome, because now we no longer feel like we're in our own living room and having our own private moment. Now we feel like we're being tended to and waited on, and someone's eavesdropping and so on and so forth. So that's a third example without the labor component. The fourth example that I want to give you is going back to what I shared a little bit earlier about the free champagne and the free bottle of wine and so on. And you have to recognize, like, I for one don't drink. I haven't had a drink in, I don't know, 2007, so what is that, 16 years? I can't even count anymore, but it's been a long time. And I understand the gesture of somebody saying, hey, here's a bottle of champagne or here's a bottle of wine. It's a really lovely gesture and I really appreciate it. But what that does for me is it shows me that they don't know who I am or anything about me, right? And you know how much happier I would be if somebody brought me a Diet Coke with ice? Like, that's literally all I want. And so if anybody's actually trying to be hospitable towards me, and they took a moment to find out anything about me, and they delivered something that I care about, right? It may not be what somebody who wants a glass of wine cares about, but the whole point of hospitality is it's not one size fits all, it's one fits one. It's one to one, not one to many. And so consequently, as we go out and we try and be hospitable hosts, hospitable owners of hotels and boutique hotels and so on, we have to remember that, like, one size does not fit all. And even though it's commonplace for somebody to put a bottle of champagne or commonplace for somebody to put a bottle of wine, there are people, and an increasing number of people, who don't consume alcohol. And not that you're, rubbing it in our face, it's nothing negative, but it's nothing positive either. It's kind of like if you're lactose intolerant and I give you a big cheese plate, you're not gonna celebrate. You're gonna be like, oh, well, thanks, and it kind of falls flat. So the point in this is hospitality is meeting the guest where they are. It's one-to-one. It's getting to know them and their preferences, tailoring your business and your approach to drive delight in them individually, not like this is our corporate policy, this is what we do when somebody gets engaged. And the more that we get to know our guests and repeat guests and keep track of their likes and preferences, the more we can blow their mind away. So for instance, when people do in fact know that I prefer Diet Coke or Coke Zero actually with ice, and I show up to something, an event or a function or into a room, and the host says, Richard, I got your Diet Coke. I smile, I'm delighted, I feel welcome. That's who I am and that's what I want, and they know me and they're catering to me. And that's critically important going forward as we differentiate ourselves from the masses that aren't following this channel, that aren't thinking about next-gen hospitality, and are doing the same rinse and repeat for all guests. And they think that they're being really, really clever and smart and friendly and hospitable, but actually are being lazy and complacent because they're doing what worked in the past as opposed to thinking about the future and what's the next generation of hospitality. So do me a favor, like the video, subscribe, and comment below. What have people done for you that have really made you smile and bring out like the best self? And what have you done for others to reciprocate? How do we pay this forward? Thank you very much, and let's go.